Black Sabbath were an English rock band, formed in Birmingham in 1968 by guitarist Tommi Iommi, drummer Bill Ward, bassist Geezer Butler, and vocalist Ozzy Osbourne. They are often cited as pioneers of heavy metal music. The band helped define the genre with their first three albums: Black Sabbath, 1970, Paranoid, 1970, and Master of Reality, 1971. Let's dive in and get to know a little bit of the history behind the second record, shall we? In 1968, following the breakup of their previous band, called Mythology, in 1968, guitarist Tommi Iommi and drummer Bill Ward sought to form a heavy blues rock band in Aston, Birmingham. Iommi, who had picked up the guitar as a teenager after being inspired by the likes of Hank Marvin and the Shadows, was forced to play guitar left-handed after an industrial accident at the age of 17. On his last day of work in a sheet metal factory, he lost the tips of the middle and ring finger of his right hand. The two enlisted Geezer Butler, who switched to bass, having been playing rhythm guitar, and vocalist Ozzy Osbourne, after Osbourne placed an advertisement in a local music shop. Ozzy Zig Needs Gig, has own PA. The new group was initially named the Polka Tulk Blues Band, after a cheap brand of talcum powder Osbourne saw in his mother's bathroom. They renamed themselves Earth, but after being booked in error instead of a small-time English circuit band with the same name, they decided to change their name again. They finally chose the name Black Sabbath in early 1969, based on a film directed by Mario Bava and starring Boris Karloff. Best remembered for his roles in horror films and his portrayal of Frankenstein's monster in Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein. The band had noticed how people enjoyed being frightened, and inspired, Iommi and his partners decided to play a heavy blues style of music laced with gloomy sounds and lyrics. While recording their first album in a castle, Geezer Butler read an occult book and had a dream of a dark figure at the end of his bed. Butler told Osbourne about the dream, and together they wrote the lyrics to Black Sabbath, one of their first songs in a darker vein. In June 1970, Sabbath reunited with producer Roger Bain at Regent Sound Studios in Island Studios, London, to record sessions for their second album, as well as working with the band on their debut. Bain also produced Welsh trio Budgie's first two albums, as well as Judas Priest's debut disc. The band returned to the studio in June 1970, just 4 months after their debut was released. Paranoid was released on September 18, 1970. It was produced by Roger Bain at Regent Sound and Island Studios, both in London, United Kingdom. It was recorded soon after returning from the road. All they had seen was negative reviews of their first album from the world's rock press. They didn't realize a loyal fan base was building in the US, and their main goal was to prove to their families that they weren't wasting their time making music. "We finished the first album, toured Europe for 6 weeks, and then went right back in the studio," said bassist and lyricist Geezer Butler.
Generals gathered in their masses.
The new album was initially set to be named War Pigs after the song War Pigs, which was critical of the Vietnam War. However, Warner changed the title of the album to Paranoid, due to possible negative associations from those who supported the troops sent there. According to Ozzy Osbourne, this story isn't true, and the record company simply understood that it would be easier to sell the disc if it had the name of his first and main single, Paranoid, which had already been achieving important results on the radio. While Geezer Butler, the author of the song, said that there is a direct approach to the Vietnam War, opposing the conflict. Contrary from being the satanic album it was portrayed as, Paranoid is filled with relevant social and political commentary. The cover was shot and designed by Keith McMillan, and his assistant Roger Brown modeled it. Roger Bain suggested that the band should do commercial song. The album's lead single, Paranoid, was written in the studio at the last minute. According to Ward, they didn't have enough songs for the album, and Tony just played the Paranoid guitar lick, and that was it. It took them 20-25 minutes to create it. One of the biggest suggestions was to write another song for the album that would serve as a single. So, after tracking the other 7 songs, Black Sabbath wrote the title track on the spot. "I sat there during the lunch break and came up with the main riff for Paranoid," Iommi said. "And then when the other guys came back, I played it to them and they thought it was good, so we recorded that just as a filler." The single was released in September 1970 and reached number 4 on the UK singles chart, remaining Black Sabbath's only top 10 hit. The album followed in the UK in October 1970, where, pushed by the success of the Paranoid single, it reached number 1 on the UK albums chart. The US release was held off until January 1971, as the Black Sabbath album was still on the chart at the time of Paranoid's UK release. In the US in March 1971, and would go on to sell 4 million copies in the US with virtually no radio airplay. The album reached number 23 on the US charts and numbered 8 in Britain. The album went gold in the States on May 7, 1971, almost 8 months after it was released, and it took another 15 years to go platinum. In 1995, the album was certified quadruple platinum. It's considered one of the greatest and most influential heavy metal albums of all time, which defined the sound and style of heavy metal more than any other record in rock history. The album was ranked at number 131 on Rolling Stone magazine's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. It's indeed the most important record in the history of rock and metal, and everyone should listen to it. Lots of people consider it the definitive work of the genre of all time. A masterpiece that every metalhead should own in their record collection. A record that set off the band into the mainstream. All we can say is, thank you Tommy, Ozzy, Geezer, and Bill. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to follow us for more content based on metal and rock.